Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man, and I am back with another rendition of Marvel May, the special month where I talk about potential animated adaptation for animated adaptations, plural, perhaps within a shared universe as well, for various Marvel properties. Today on the chopping block, as the title has already given away, is Iron Man. I have to say, I've never seen this steampunk-ish rendition of the Iron Man armor before. Still looks kind of cool. And I have to admit that while Iron Man was the first property of the MCU, I didn't exactly know what direction I should really take take this character. Be while also keeping a good perspective on the social issues at the time as well as his characterization. And given that the MCU did him first, I thought that any subsequent adaptation of the Marvel universe as a whole should hold out a little bit before introducing him. And to that end, that is kind of what I did with uh, with this rendition, because now I can quite safely say that I found an adaptation or a particular path that I think would work well for this character. And just like my my other Marvel May videos, I also want this uh, Iron Man show to take place in the 60s, though to be more precise, perhaps the mid to late 60s during the Vietnam War. Because while Iron Man's story is mutable enough to where it can realistically take place during any war, I really think Vietnam uh, is the part of the story that works most effectively with is the part of history that works most effectively with his story. And I imagine the story would start with a young Tony Stark, who will have just been uh, handed the reins to his dad's uh, maybe research or maybe high tech equipment factory, or rather more precisely, weapons or special equipment company, and he decides to test out such a system in the during the Vietnam War. What kind of system would that be? Well, I think the one that would make most sense, considering what he is about to, what he is about to do and what the technological developments of the time were, would perhaps be a mobile missile launching system. And I think he would. I think that is what he would demonstrate, maybe at several places, and in transit he would be kidnapped by Wong Chu, who is basically the first Iron Man villain in the comics, the guy who uh, and the guy who first kidnapped him and forced him into creating weapons for him. And yeah, and you already know how this is going. Under his tutelage, under his lock and key, Tony is forced to build some kind of is forced to replicate his missile launching system. Maybe he even has an assistant. Like, because I'll remind you that in the comics, Tony was actually locked away uh, with an Asian physicist. In this adaptation, he would be an engineer, because the physics is already seen as uh, is already seen as irrationally broad. Having something more specific, would work a little bit better. And I imagine, I imagine these guys put together would develop the first Iron Man costume, or Iron Man armor, partly also as a life support device for Tony himself, and then also as a mobile weapons platform. And he utilizes that mobile weapons platform in order to bust out of Wang Chu's prison, maybe even fighting him directly. And yeah, then he finds his way back to civilization, befriends James Rhodes, and uh, he finds that in his absence, Stark Industries has actually taken a severe downturn, which is now basically operating as a skeleton crew, with most of his competitors doing a whole bunch of other stuff, a lot of it shady too. And this is kind of what I see his direction being, partly him being partly him battling against Soviet equivalents such as the Crimson Dynamo. Partly him battling local capitalists, business owners who are up to, in comparison to him, are up to shady stuff. Guys like the Melter, or various other such figures, because keep in mind that the MCU has often been accused of painting certain figures as being better than they actually are. This rendition will correct that, at least to some extent. I already covered how Captain America would become a conscientious objector as over the course of the Vietnam War. I think Tony going against the military-industrial complex, to that extent, or against shady capitalist practices in general, would be would represent an interesting development in that manner as well. But still, I will remind you, he also has that anti-authoritarian bent where he goes against, against the Soviet Union and its various enforcers. I imagine also there could be a combination. You can also face it up against combinations of both, so like authoritarian capitalists, such as, you already saw a glimpse of him, the Mandarin. The Mandarin, I will remind you, actually comes from a somewhat wealthy background, and it is through his wealthy background that he will have actually been able to gain his knowledge of both science and sorcery, and he would be active in China, and within this Chinese regime, he would still find a way to paint himself as a benefactor of this new regime in order to maintain his standing and his privilege. And I imagine he would perhaps be opposed to the opening up of Sino-American diplomatic and commercial relations, which is how he and Tony would come in conflict. And this could perhaps be the first season's mid-season two-parter, with him, describing the first encounter between Tony and the Mandarin, and him facing off against all the challenges that the Mandarin could pose. he will ultimately be successful in that endeavor. However, that success would definitely come at a cost because by the end, yeah, I very much see this this iteration of Tony turning to the bottle in order to relieve his uh, PTHD and his overall anxiety. Also, I'm just now noticing that even the helmet looks haggard. Like, seriously, look at that face. Anyway, and as he does so over time, he ends up becoming a little bit more self-destructive, just like the guy Tony Stark is based off of, Howard Hughes, and that would allow various opportunists from within his company to take it over. And by various opportunists, I primarily mean Obadiah Stane, who builds the Ironmonger armor, and manages to conclude his takeover of Tony's company when when he is at his lowest. Once he finds himself at his lowest, he then decides that he's going to stop, and he's going to put everything or a lot of things right, starting with his endeavor to defeat Obadiah Stane. He could perhaps also be assisted by either Pepper Potts or Happy Hogan, or maybe even both. I imagine them being in his corner, in his company, being active to some extent within that sphere. Uh, and it would be one of them, though my money is on Pepper, for actually ultimately being awarded control over Stark Industries once this whole endeavor is over. Why would she be given control of Stark Industries, given Tony would still be around? Well, it's part of his endeavor to turn a new leaf. So he realizes that he realizes that what he's going through is a little bit, is too much for him. So he decides to hand off the company in her hand off the company in her care, and and change it from a weapons manufacturing, or special military equipment manufacturing company, into more of a general industrial research and services company. While he is away and taking care of himself. Season 2, and that's how season 1 will end. Season 2 will pick up with a now sober Tony who finds himself confronted with a brand new issue, Armor Wars. Yeah, I'm going there. This is a cover for Armor Wars 1, but I am actually thinking of adapting both Armor Wars 1 and 2, with with a little bit of a twist. Because in my mind, in Tony's absence, with the Stark Industries becoming Stark Research, it is likely that they will have made armor designs a little bit more accessible towards towards a broad variety of other companies, and therefore of other industrialists. And I imagine those guys would come a little bit more often into conflict against each other. and after a while, these conflicts would go would take some very shady directions. And that shadiness would shape the dimensions of the first Armor War, where where Tony re-equips the armor, and then goes out on a tear against various other people who with their own armor designs to try to use them for nefarious purposes. That's Armor Wars 1. Armor Wars 2 will see Tony do the same thing, except internationally. Like, he will, over time it will become clear that his technology will have come into illicit hands and be used for illicit purposes. Sometimes even with the express permission of the U.S. government or any of its allies in in perhaps in one of several neo-colonial projects, and it would be within that spirit, within that venture, that he goes out to other places in in Central Asia, in South America, maybe even in Africa, and deals with the various threats there. Maybe even encountering some new some new threats from the Soviet Union, and also potentially encountering an ally in Black Panther. This is an idea that I just came up with now. It's not something I've fleshed out. So this is this is the thing we're currently sitting on. And in between these armor wars, I think there could also be several one and done story arcs that would pepper season 2. And then we move into, and this would all take place roughly within the 870s or early to mid to late 80s. Because I'm trying to look at the Cold War through through this dynamic of what it means to have a fair economic competition, or what does it mean for an economy to to be fair. What is in general free action. That is more or less the angle I want to explore over the course of this animated series. I don't necessarily think. Hopefully I can do this without coming across as too propagandistic, because I don't want Tony to have all the answers either. I just want him to stamp out the answers the answers that are wrong, and have people around him maybe come up with better ones. And then that will be season 2. Season 3 will begin with the Dragon Seed Saga. Keep in mind I already introduced the Mandarin, and I'm thinking Fin Fang Foom could also be introduced, maybe in one of the one-offs of season 2. And from that point forward, we have the makings of this particular story, where we see the Mandarin once again take up power and try to get his revenge against his opponent. I think this storyline would be. I think this storyline would showcase the. Would take place more in the early 90s, perhaps after the fall of the. Definitely after the fall of the Berlin Wall, which was in November of '89. It could potentially occur after the fall of the Soviet Union as well, as people try to figure out what the next world paradigm is going to be. And it is within that field that I think the Mandarin would try to once again make himself, try to once again assert himself, maybe with the help of, maybe even with the help of an alien dragon. However, Stark is able to overcome their efforts. By now, if you're if you're keeping up with the internal chronology that I've tried to build throughout this series, you will notice that Stark is pushing 50. So And so one of the running storylines of season 3 is that he is actually looking for a I kind of want to say replacement, but the more appropriate term would be successor. And especially as he's trying to set up and he could potentially also try to set up a new guard, well, one that would, one that would say keep the game balanced, as I've alluded to earlier, with himself for now as as leader of that guard of people in armor. And who could, however, as I said, he's looking for his successor. Who could that be? Well, I have two contenders in mind who would more or less duke it out for the position. The first one is Michael O'Brien, who kind of actually looks like Tony if I, the more I look into it. Or maybe he just looks like Robert Downey Jr., I don't know. He would perhaps be the most obvious choice. Maybe he's potentially as a former investigator, and fraudster. So you probably former investigator, not necessarily in terms of crime, but more in terms of like fraud. But he would definitely still have perhaps some level of martial prowess and perhaps an intrinsic understanding of right and wrong that would allow him to separate himself from the pack. However, my money for who should be, for who should succeed Iron Man within this point of the story would be Edward March, who in my take would be a former youth boxer who unfortunately, former youth boxer who, when representing himself, he very much sported the Iron Man colors of of red and gold. Except, and the reason I call him a youth boxer rather than just boxer is that in this interpretation he would have injured his hands severely enough that he, severely enough to not be able to compete as an adult. But he still retains that, but he's perhaps still retains a level of admiration towards, towards Iron Man, and it is that level of admiration that that admiration also pushes him to sign up to the Guardian program that Tony is trying to set up. And as I said, I imagine him being the official successor, and I imagine the threats these Guardians would face would basically be Russians 2.0, who now see that their country has not necessarily had a very positive turn, but they are willing to look around and make the best of what they've got. And the best of what they got means that they're looking out for a variety of ways in which to exercise more of their force in order to gain as much of an advantage as possible. And that is what the good guys are supposed to prevent. Make sure that the authoritarian bent that that these various villains represent no longer rises up. And yeah, that is basically my take for what a Iron Man series should look like. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the idea itself or to my particular implementation, that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I talk about book-related and literature topics, a link to which you can find in the description down below. And if you're not interested in any of that, then I suggest you stay on this channel and go through my extensive backlog where I cover various adaptations, either for animation, either for either for movies, primarily for movies, occasionally for TV, or stuff outside of adaptations like various discourses. Then I suggest you then yeah, that's you can stay on this main channel and on this current channel and look through all of that. If none of the options I've presented interest you, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was it for me. Until next time, I have been the One Take Man.